Welcome back to Chariot Palmistry, guys. We are very lucky today because we have Dr. Arjun Pai here with us. He's an expert astrologer and he's even got his own YouTube channel at Dr. Pai Astrology. Arjun, say hello.
Hi everybody, and namaste. Namaste to all your viewers. Sulabh, it's wonderful to be on Chariot Astrology.
Yep. Well, thank you for coming on.
Chariot Palmistry.
Yeah, we're palmists over here. It's sort of a crossbreed with astrology and palmistry, isn't it? We're like that's cousins right. Almost.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. That's very true. Yeah.
Great. So you've got like an amazing following online as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into astrology?
Oh, well, I think I've always been in astrology for a very long time, right from my childhood. It was not actually astrology that I started with. I was more into palmistry, to be very honest, and wow. My interest was in palmistry and numerology. And then it became Vastu. I was interested in Vastu Shastra. So this was my younger days, But yes, my first book in astrology that I read way back was from my uncle's library. I picked up a book called On Astrology by Alan Leo. I think most of them, the modern astrologers may not have read his book. This was, I'm talking about way back in the late 1980s or early 1990s. So that's how I got into astrology. Then when I started with Krishnamurti Paddhati. I started self-learning Krishnamurti Paddhati, but then I was not good with Krishnamurti Paddhati because there were some confusing areas that I was not sure about. And when you learn KP astrology, then you definitely need a teacher who can guide you. So I never had a teacher. So then I went into Parashara-based astrology. Then Nadi astrology and Lal Kitab. So a lot of things, and then finally came into nakshatras. So that's how my foray was in all these divination sciences. I've got a little bit of things that I've experienced, but yeah, to say that my initial days. Now I don't know much about palmistry, but my initial interest was into palmistry and numerology. To be very honest.
Oh wow! So it's more like brothers rather than cousins then for you.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, cool. And you've also created your own Paddhati, your own map. It's the Pai Paddhati. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I have to be honest that it is not like it's my Paddhati. I would say it's always been there. It's just that people have not looked at it from that perspective. And I'm grateful to my dear friend Kapil Raj, who actually popularized this and called it a Paddhati. It's just basis of, I was just looking at things from a perspective of seeing the exaltation points, the debilitation points, and also the Mula Trikona, and from that emerged this whole concept. And I was discussing this with my students, and I have to be thankful to one of my students who actually put it in the diagrammatic form, which is Dr. Kanodi Santi Krishnan. So he actually put it in a diagrammatic form, whatever I was trying to explain my theories and things that I was trying to say that I'm seeing some from my observations. And then that's how, this became more popularized as a Paddhati. I don't want to claim any credit to that. It's because it's based on the basics and the fundamentals of astrology. That's what I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, speaking of the fundamentals of astrology, today we're going to be talking about the Dashas, isn't it?
That's right. This is something which I always was intrigued by, why we have a particular sequence of Dashas. Like when we talk about the Vimshottari Dasha sequence, Sulabh, it's interesting that we start with the Ketu Mahadasha, and then we go to the Venus after Ketu, and after Venus comes, you have the Sun, the Moon, and so on and so forth. So we have all the 9 Mahadashas, and there is a particular sequence that is given by Rishi Parashar. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to look at how this whole concept of the this Vimshottari Dasha sequence has come about. So I've got a couple of slides on that, so I can share that slides, and then we can, you have any questions, we can definitely take those questions from you.
Wonderful.
So, yeah. Okay, so let's get started with the slides. So, and do you have any observations, that are you aware of the Dasha sequence, and have you interpreted that, and do you have your own thing that you have looked at any time?
I've studied it because I've studied astrology, but through palmistry, we don't look at Dasha specifically. At most, we look at transits through zodiac houses and a little bit through nakshatras too. But the Dashas is just a whole other language for us. So I'm sure a lot of our followers would be fascinated by this.
All right. Okay. First of all, before I get started, let me tell you about, what are dashas. Dashas are these planetary time periods that have been given. So there are multiple dasha systems that have been proposed by Parashar Rishi and other rishis as well. There is nakshatra-based dasha systems, which is based purely on the lunar matches. And then there is a Rashi-based system of dashas as well. Like, for example, Jaimini is a Rashi-based. Chara Dasha is mostly a Rashi-based system, which is based on the zodiac signs. But the dashas, which is the most popular dasha amongst all of the Parashari dashas that Parashar Rishi has given, is the Vimshottari Dasha. Now, Vimshottari means it is 120 years. And Parashar Rishi mentioned that in Kali Yuga, that this dasha would be more applicable. Of course, there are other dashas also, which we know that they're also very useful in their applications. Like we have the Yogini Dasha, which is based on 36 years. And then we have Kala Chakra Dasha as well, which, Lord Shiva says this is the most appropriate dasha that you can use in this time period, which will give you more accurate results. But however, if you see, most astrologers would use these planetary time periods based on the moon cycle, which means whichever nakshatra the moon is posited in, and there is a planetary ruler who is associated with that nakshatra, and then that's how your life would begin from that dasha of where your moon is based. So everybody knows about the Dasha sequence of Vimshottari, but nobody has really tried to look at why is the sequence of Dashas, which is 120 years. We start always with, so for example, Ketu, then it's Venus, then I said it's Sun, Moon, after Moon comes Mars, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, and then Mercury. Okay. So let's look at, let me share my screen so that then we can look at, okay, Sulabh, can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. Right, okay. Now, here what we see is our solar system. We have the sun, and then we can see we have the Mercury, the Venus, the Earth, the Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. We're not going to consider, the outer planets, which is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, purely because in Vedic astrology, we are just taking these 7 visible planets plus Rahu and Ketu. Okay, so one concept is to look at each of these planets and their orbital speed. Okay, so each of these planets have a different orbital speed. Okay, and the way that this whole concept of the Dasha system by the Vimshottari Dasha system by Parashar Rishi, it is based on a concept that I'm trying to teach you, is to see, looking at the fastest moving planets to the slowest moving planets. Okay, so when we look at the sequence, Sulabh, the slowest moving planet in our solar system, which is up to Saturn, I said we're not going to include, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, the outer planets, because they're not It's not that they have not been used in Vedic astrology. It's not been popularly used. Maybe some texts would definitely talk about these outer planets. So we will take it only from Sun to Saturn. So Saturn amongst them is the slowest moving graha or the planet. Then we have Jupiter, which is the next slowest. The orbital speed of this, the velocity at which it orbits the Sun, the speed at which it moves is Jupiter is the next slowest. Then you have the Mars. Then we have Earth, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon is the fastest. Amongst all the grahas that we consider, Moon is the fastest. Moon has a mean orbital velocity of almost about 1 kilometer per second. So it's going to transit about 0.635 miles per second. Okay. So the Sun has an orbital speed around the galaxy of approximately 200 kilometers per second.
Right.
Okay. Right. So now what we do is we just try to arrange this in a circular form. We know that Sun is the innermost star, which is the king of our solar system. And then after the Sun comes Mercury, Venus. Then after Venus is Earth. Then we have the outer planets. So whatever the planets we see on one side of the Earth, we call them the inner planets, because when you see from the Earth perspective, whatever falls on one side is the inner planets, and whatever falls on the out of the Earth, we call them the outer planets. Okay, so the outer planets are Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So we are rearranging this whole thing in a form of a circle here. So starting with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So now here is something that I want to say, because when we look at a geocentric model, we would replace the Earth with the Sun. Okay, so that's why what we do is I would place the Sun very close to the Earth, or I would replace the Sun with the Earth, because when we're looking from the Earth, our reference point is the Earth as a geocentric model, and we're looking at all the stars. So Earth is the reference point from where we are looking at. So that's why we can replace the Earth with the Sun. So that's what I'm trying to do is I'm going to put the Sun and replacing the Sun in the place of the Earth. So if you look at the Earth again as a reference point, so I brought the Sun closer to the Earth as though it is going to replace the Earth. So what we have, the sequence is we start with Mercury, then we have Venus, then we have Sun, because the Sun is kind of replacing the Earth because we're looking at the geocentric model. Then we have Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn.
Sure, that makes sense.
So does it make sense now? So we know that the sequences, we start from Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Okay, just because it's a geocentric model. But we'll keep the Earth there just because we want to take that as a reference point, because we want to know that this is the inner planets and these are the outer planets. Right. So now we go to the next thing is the Sun and the Mars are both, these are the male grahas, very close to the Earth, or rather we can say, Sun and Mars are complementing each other. So one is on the inner planet, we can say Sun is the inner, and we say Mars is the outer, but both of them are male. Now let's look at a combination of the male and the female. Jupiter is an outer planet, which is called as a male planet, and Venus is called as a female planet. And finally, we have the neuter gender, or we call them the pangender, or the eunuchs, are Mercury and Saturn. So all that I've done from the previous slide, if you can see here, the same thing is what I've rearranged just to show you that we have two male planets, then we have a male and a female, and then we have the two eunuchs.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Okay, but the sequence, we're still keeping the sequence. All right, now let's go to the next step of looking at how we can derive at this. Okay, before we go there, I just want all your viewers to know, when you look at the Dasha sequence, there in the Vimshottari Dasha sequence, which is, I said, is 120 years. The sun is in Parashar has given 6 years in the Dasha sequence. In Vimshottari Dasha, sun takes 6 years. Moon has been given 10 years. Mars has been given 7 years. Mercury has been given 17 years. Okay, Jupiter has been given 16 years. Venus has been given 20 years. Saturn 19. Rahu, which is the north node of the moon, what we say, it is 18 years. And the south node of the moon, which is Ketu, which is 7 years. And when you add them all up, they give you 120 years. Okay. Now we could probably do another video on saying, why sun has been given 6 years, moon has been given 10 years, 7 Mars, and Ketu 7 years, and all of that. That's another video we can do to explain the number of years that have been mentioned for each of these planets. But here we're trying to look at the sequence. So now let's look at the sequence from this perspective here. Now, so we have 120 years, Sulabh, in the Vimshottari Dasha. So what I'm trying to tell you is we have 60 years for all the inner planets and 60 years for all the outer planets. Okay, so Mercury is 17 years, Sun is 6 years, and Venus is 20 years. So we have a total of 43 years.
Yeah.
Because in the inner planets, we have Sun, Venus, and Mercury. So Venus is 17 years. Venus is 20 years, Mercury is 17 years, and Sun is 6 years. If you add them all, it is 43 years. So we are left with a balance of 17 years here because we need to have a total of 60 years. So if you look at the left-hand side, we have a balance because 43 plus 17 would make it 60. When you go to the outer planets, which is Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and I keep adding the numbers that I'm seeing the Vimshottari Dasha sequences, Mars is given 7 years, Jupiter is 16 years, and Saturn is 19 years. When I add them, I get a total of 42 years on the outer planets. But however, there is a balance of 18 years on the outer planets.
It's very close symmetry.
Exactly. We need to have the symmetry because it's about 60 and 60. When you look at this, the inner planets and the outer planets, we need to have a symmetry. So the symmetry is 60 plus 60 is 120. That's the complete cycle. So that means there is a balance on the right-hand side when we see, which is the inner planets, we see there is a balance of 17 years. And when you look at the left-hand side, which is the outer planets, we have a balance of 18 years. Now, let's go and see in the next slide. On the right, on the left-hand side, the outer planets, Rahu is being given 18 years. And we can fit Rahu in between Mars and Jupiter. Now, the question you might be asking is, why am I fitting in Rahu, between Mars and Jupiter? Okay. The thing is, in astronomy, we know that between Mars and Jupiter, if you look at the solar system, between Mars and Jupiter, there is a huge gap between Mars and Jupiter. And that probably used to be a planet in the past, which has now become an asteroid belt. There is a belt of asteroids in between Mars and Jupiter, which we call as the asteroid belt. So if you look at astronomers are saying that maybe billions of years ago, there used to be a planet there, and that planet is missing. And in Vedic astrology, we call it Rahu, which is, we have placed Rahu there because it's the asteroid belt. Okay. And So that covers our 18 years, which was the missing link on the outer planets. Now let's look at the inner planets. There is a balance of 17 years. So what makes the 17 years? You add the moon and Ketu. So what I did was, because moon is the closest planet to the earth, so I place it very close to the sun, because I said sun is what I'm replacing it with the earth, but I'm keeping the moon very close. So I'm taking the moon very close there, because it's a satellite for the earth. Moon. So I have to place it very close to the earth. And what happens is, because Rahu and Ketu are always 180 degrees diagonally apart, I have to place Ketu in between Mercury and Venus.
Sure.
So there could have been a missing energy center, because we know Rahu and Ketu are nothing but mathematical points that our rishis have identified. But we do not know the energies of these mathematical points that are there. So we know there is an asteroid belt between Mars and Rahu, and we know Rahu and Ketu are always 180 degrees apart, and they are complementing each other. So when we see that, when we put that axis, we see between Venus and Mercury, we'll have Ketu.
Very interesting.
All right. So now this gives us a sequence. We know the sequence is of Vimshottari Dasha is, we generally start from Ketu. Ketu is the head, of all the grahas. There is a mantra which is, Falasha Pushpa Shankasham, Taraka Graha Mastakam, Raudrat Makam Ghoram, Tam Ketum Pranamamiham. So this is by Vedavyas Rishi. So Palasha Pushpa Shankasham, which means like a Palasha flower. Palasha flower is called as the flame of the forest. Like it's reddish, like a flame. Okay? Palasha Pushpa Shankasham. Taraka Graha Mastakam. Taraka means Tara, which means all the stars, and Grahas. He's the head of all the stars and the Grahas. That's what Vedavyas Rishi has said in the mantra. It's a Navagraha Stotra. So Palasha Pushpa Shankasham, Taraka Graha Mastakam, Raudrat Makam Ghoram, Tam Ketum Pranamamyaham, which means, the fierce one. Raudram means Rudra. He is as fierce as Rudra. But he is the head of the stars and the grahas. That's what he's saying. So he becomes the first. So you always say Ketu is related to something to do with your past. It's your south node of the moon. So we start from Ketu. Then the next graha, which comes, the Dasha, the sequence of the Dasha, which means the time period, the cycles, it's Venus. After Venus comes Sun. After Sun comes Moon. We are not taking the Earth into consideration, because that's where we are. We are in the reference of Earth. Then it's Mars. Then it's Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, and last is Mercury. So this is the sequence of how we see each of the cycles, which is completely fitting into this whole Dasha sequence. And if you really look at it, Sulabh, this is what I call as the axis of the eclipse, which is Earth, Moon, and Sun. If you draw a line, the Earth, Moon, and the Sun will always create eclipses.
Sure.
Okay. Then this is called the axis of the male and the female, which is Mars is the masculine planet and Venus is the feminine planet. We say, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, isn't it? So that's the axis of the male and the female. Then this is called the karmic node axis. Okay. And this is the axis that you see is of dual signs. All the dual signs are ruled by Jupiter and Mercury. And finally, this axis is the axis of the father and the son, which is Sun and Saturn is nothing but light and darkness. It's day and light, day and night. dawn and dusk. So all of those things that you see in the father and the son. So we see this whole combination of planets, and I wanted to just share this information with your thing of how the sequence of the dashas was arrived at by Parashar Rishi. The most interesting point here, Sulabh, is about this asteroid belt, which people have forgotten, where Rahu is kind of being depicted there in the Dasha sequence.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I'm just thinking from a palmistry point of view, in between the Jupiter mount and the Mars mount is a lifeline. And that's literally the asteroid belt from where you come from the past into the present. So that sort of makes perfect sense. And in palmistry, between the Venus mount and the Mercury mount is the planet or the Rahu triangle. So again, we can get Ketu and Rahu perfectly in there.
Wow.
Yep. It's a very nice way that you've put all of this. So it really is all mathematical, and it just goes to show you in all the ancient world, they had logic behind their whole system. We've just forgotten most of what it is.
That's true. So that's what I wanted to look at the system of why there could be other theories as well on the sequence. This is what I have come across, and I've also studied the system. And I was just trying to reason out. Of course, there could be another system on the basis of which Parashar Rishi has arrived at this sequence. But this looks like a very probable explanation.
Yeah, absolutely.
For why we have a particular Dasha sequence.
Yep. No, it makes perfect sense. But why do you think the speed of planets is so important in this? I mean, it's speculation, but in your view, what do you think?
See, there is also a system in astrology, Sulabh, I want to say, and this is very important, which has been forgotten. Again, the knowledge of the nadis. Nadis means these are esoteric secrets of our sages been written on leaves, ancient leaves. Now, on the Nadi scriptures, we also see there is a system of dividing every zodiac based on giving them 8 slots. And that slot-based system is called as Kaksha. Kaksha means a slot. So a slot-based system has been given. So if you look at a Rashi system, and you look at, you said in palmistry, you use Gochar, which means transits is applicable. Now, I want to give you probably a way of trying to analyze this also maybe from palmistry, because I've not been a student of palmistry for a very long time, is dividing the zodiac on the basis of the slowest moving planet to the fastest moving planet. Okay, so this Kaksha slot method is you divide the 30 degrees of a zodiac sign into 8 parts or 8 divisions. So let's say the starting point is 0 degrees of the zodiac. So 0 degrees to 3 degrees 45 minutes is been given to the slowest moving planet, which is Saturn. So Saturn actually controls this 3 degrees 45 minutes. Okay, so any planet which is coming there would have an influence of Saturn wherever Saturn in the zodiac is transiting with respect to that point.
Okay.
Then the next 3 degrees 45 minutes is given to Jupiter. Okay. After Jupiter comes Mars, the next 3 degrees 45. Then it's the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, and last, the 8th slot is given to the Lagna or the ascendant.
Okay.
And this system is what you use also in deciphering when you do Gochar or when you do transits in astrology, Vedic astrology, and you follow a system based on Parashar Rishi. It's called as Ashtaka Varga. Have you heard of this term?
I have.
Varga?
Yep.
Yeah. It is a base of point-based system. And the point-based system is like our computer-based language, which is based on, the binary, ones and zeros.
Yep.
The zeros are called as bindu. Okay, so you get one bindu is like ones, ones and zeros are being given. So there is one and zeros is what the system is. So when you see the transit of these fast-moving planets, like whether it is Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu, we will see in the Ashtaka Varga, we will see if a point, a bindu has been given by a planet in which slot. And if it has been given us a point in the slot, when the Saturn or Jupiter or Rahu and Ketu is moving through that slot, that taksha, then it gives beneficial results.
I see.
And when there is 0 points it is giving, then it cannot give you, based on again, whether it was saying that the planet is going to be auspicious when it is going to transit that Rashi or inauspicious. So then on the basis of that, it will give you the result. So this slow to the fastest moving planet is a concept which is also can be used in the system. And the same thing is also being used in this Vimshottari Dasha sequence order is also being calculated in KP system, which is the Krishnamurti Paddhati. Again, has got 8 slots, which means each Rashi will have 8 cuspal lords or sub-lords. That's the same concept.
So why do they go for 8 and not 9 to match the Navgraha?
The thing is, they do not consider, the Rahu and Ketu. It is 7 visible planets, and they're just going with the ascendant, which is the Lagna. They not consider the shadowy planets because these are only mathematical points. And when you do the when we do the Ashtaka Varga system, in Ashtaka Varga, there is no Ashtaka Varga for the shadow planets, which means there is no point-based system for Rahu and Ketu. So Rahu and Ketu are excluded, and then they are introducing the system only for the visible planets along with the ascendant. And not others.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And also the reason behind the 7 is because we also look at the week, the week of the day. I mean, the days of the week. So we start from Sunday, the Sun, Monday, Moon, Tuesday, Mars, Wednesday, Mercury, Thursday, Jupiter, and Saturday, Saturn. We do not have a place for Rahu and Ketu as a separate day.
True. It almost follows exactly from what you were saying before, slowest to fastest, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why the weekend goes so quickly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for sharing all this information. There's a lot of good gems in here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Sulabh. It's wonderful to share. If there's anything that you viewers want to, probably have in our next session, if you want to do anything specifically, I'm very happy to come and do that also.
Yeah.
So please let me know what your viewers feel about this, and based on the feedback, you can always see what they are interested in this discussion.
Oh, I'm sure they'll have lots of questions because you're a treasure trove of information. So thank you very much for coming here, Dr. Pai.
Thank you, Sulabh, for having me here. Highly obliged. Thank you.
All the best.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.